Inner peace is somewhat disappointing, and maybe you felt this as well. You're years onto the journey, you're halfway up the mountain, you've done your spiritual work, at least to a significant degree, and you're finding yourself a little bit purposeless. You're peaceful, but you haven't got the purpose. That's the topic of today's question, and I'm going to bring it up on the screen for you. As you can see, this person said, "I've never felt more at peace, but the peace is scaring me because I'm slowly detaching from worldly pursuits and I don't know which direction I want to go next. I feel like a boat in the middle of the sea. No feelings, no emotions, just wandering." This is a common stage on the inner work journey. If you haven't already picked up this book before, I recommended it a few times on the channel. Halfway Up the Mountain by Mariana Kaplan. It is a series of essays, as you can see on the front cover, dealing with the premature claims to enlightenment. And I've got an extract which I'm going to bring out in about a minute or two. But firstly, let's bring out this wonderful symbolism that our friend has brought out of being like a boat in the middle of the sea. I spent a few minutes reflecting before hitting film, and I thought, you know what, let's go with that metaphor to the full extent. What do you do if you've healed yourself to the point where you're no longer on the choppy waters, it's no longer the stormy weather, you are just a boat in the middle of the sea with no particular direction, no particular agenda, and you've no longer got the holes below deck that are gushing water and all kinds of fears of drowning at any moment. You have worked very hard to get to this point on your spiritual journey. Congratulations, you've made it. You've made it past the immediate, I'm about to be capsized at any moment, all of the childhood trauma, all of the projected anxiety for the future. You are now on the serene sea. Let's take stock of where you're at. Firstly, we'll focus on the boat. Your boat, which is you. Of course, you are the boat, you are also the captain. Some would even say, if you're going to get particularly non-dualistic, you're also the ocean in any particular direction you can head to. We'll save that for just a little bit later. Let's look at the ship that you've been sailing through life on. Initially, you had the holes below deck, you had water coming in, you had maybe vermin in the food supply, you had rats that needed to be stamped out or thrown overboard because they were spoiling your energy stores. And maybe you also had a variety of, let's call it, unpalatable crewmates. You had some parts or some subpersonalities or some archetypal influences, or maybe just the voice of your mother, the voice of your father echoing inside of you, and they were causing all kinds of mischief below deck and above deck. They were getting their orders wrong, they were tying the sails in all kinds of knots and not the good kind of knots, and they were also not doing a good job at staying sober on watch. So of course, sharks start biting the ship and various things start happening in terms of things just not being ship shape. You'll eventually get tired of this metaphor, I'm sure, by the end of the video, but let's play with it for just now. You were in this moment, right? Your ship was in this moment for maybe years before you're watching this video. You had problems. At the very least, you had problems, but through reading the books I've been recommending on this channel, through your own inner work practice, you have generally tidied up the problem, the pain, and the trauma. So it's obvious, when you wake up on that fresh, salty summer's day, you're the captain on your ship and you go, what a fine day to be on the ocean. You don't have that experience as much of a memory. It's actually quite a new experience. You don't wake up and stretch and go, what a fine day to be sailing the seven seas. I wonder what adventures will go on today. I'm going to skip down deck and say, you're not in that mood. For years, you've woken up, there's water coming in. The crew are about to stage a mutiny. At any moment there's going to be a mutiny, I'm going to be stabbed in the back. That's been the energy for years. And it's very, very, very strange to not have the knife going between your ribs, to not wake with a fright all of a sudden. You may have literally experienced this. Maybe last year you were actually waking up in the middle of the night with a fright. And now you don't. That's not the story right now, but you're not yet used to waking up with that open, I wonder what happens next kind of consciousness. That's the essence of today's question as kind of inner identity, as it were. It's externalized as the story of the ship that we're using for this video, but if you can relate to this moment of being basically multiple years deep into constantly fixing what was broken, waking up with anxiety, waking up with tension, maybe mobilizing yourself with anger or false ambition to try and get something done, get more money, get more men or women, relational experiences, get more friends, get more accolades, get more and more and more, or fix and fix and fix and more and more and more and fix and fix and fix. It actually worked, and the ship is in good order. Fantastic. What about the ocean? Let's move to the second stage of this metaphor. The ocean itself is something which is unpredictable. These are the emotional tides of the environment that you're encountering. And when you're in the old traumatic patterns, it's very likely that the environment is also traumatizing to one degree or another. If you don't like the word traumatizing, call it wounding. If wounding feels too strong, take it one level lower and call it bruising. You are bruised, or wounded, or traumatized on the inside as the ship, and also the waves, the ocean, the environment, the landscape that you're sailing through is likewise wounding, bruising, or traumatizing, or bruising, wounding, and traumatizing to give you the scale in order. At a certain point in the journey, you realize that your ship is stronger and you have the ability to sail out of choppy waters. You're no longer a poor navigator. You've got all the resources you need inside of your body, and you've got the skill and perception to get yourself out of the toxic work environments, the toxic relationships, maybe particularly toxic family situations. You're no longer sailing in choppy seas. Today's question is said very specifically, I feel like a boat in the middle of the sea. No feelings, no emotions, just wandering. You can't be in a wandering consciousness if there's a storm that you're battling. You can't be in a wandering consciousness if you're navigating between the rocks, and at any moment you might be scraped along the side of a cliff and capsize and go to the bottom of the ocean. It has to be an open state of awareness, which is a genuine spiritual achievement. You should be proud of this achievement. You should be also proud of the fact that you've probably removed yourself from literal environments again, family, friends, relationships, work environments. You've literally removed yourself from things that are no good for you, so you're not repeatedly being injured. And if you extend the metaphor, you could repair your ship based on historic wounds. There's no longer any leaky holes below deck. But if you scrape up against the rock, and that rock is the bad work environment, and you scrape up against another rock, and that's the bad relationship, of course, you're constantly repairing and fixing things. This is no longer the case. For this individual, or maybe for yourself, maybe occasionally things are a bit difficult, but you're not going to be threatened with capsizing. Where does this leave you? It leaves you in a very, very unfamiliar, and some would say uncomfortable position, because you don't have aversions, but you've yet to develop authentic appetites. This is the key language of this video. I mean, we're, almost 10 minutes into the video, and we're coming to a resolution point, as it were, just painting the picture. The aversion, the spiritual aversion from pain and trauma and wounding in the past, and the environmental aversions are no longer the thing that you're battling against. You're not waking up as the captain and thinking, wow, we're only 100 meters away from the rocks. I know what I need to do today. You're likewise not waking up as the captain and you need to sort out the crew who are staging the mutiny. There's very few aversions. There's no emotions. There's no feelings. There's nothing you're fighting against. But the appetites are also diminished, because many of the appetites that you historically, conditionally, repetitively turn towards for a sense of comfort no longer have either the need nor the appeal. This is going to get practical, and just bear with me. I'm painting out a bit of a symbolic vision. Let's imagine you're still the captain on your ship. It's a difficult day. There's leaks below deck. The crew are causing trouble, and the sails are all in knots. What is the appetite that will help you with the aversion? Let's imagine that you get a nice bottle of rum. Or maybe you decide to play a few games of cards, you're drinking or you're gambling, or maybe you find a way to sneak a romantic interest on board and you have your fun in the captain's quarters. These are the appetites which help you deal with the aversions which are painful. They're pleasurable things. They might be artificial pleasures, or maybe pleasures that are no good for you. But if you're genuinely on stormy seas with a somewhat shaky ship with an unreliable crew, you're going to try and find your comforts or your pleasures in those small appetites. The drink, the gambling, the romantic relationships, or any other nameable vice or addiction, these aren't there because you've healed them. You're deep on your sobriety, perhaps. You've got a good idea of what you need for a conscious relationship. So then you think, well, if it's not an appetite that I have on ship, on board, in my immediate environment, maybe the solution is to develop a big appetite towards the great adventure ahead. But that doesn't work anymore either. You can't imagine with a genuine sense of passion that next career move, that next family success, that next personal fitness endeavor, that's going to bring that sense of purpose and pleasure. Even imagining something on the horizon in this instance, imagining setting a course towards the beautiful tropical islands or going here to this historical ruin to learn something about the past, no particular direction seems all that appealing. You haven't got the appetite for it. Neither in your immediate sphere of influence inside of your day-to-day life of things that are literally within your grasp, you haven't got the appetite there. And there's no aversion to trigger you into that kind of repetitive aversion, appetite pattern, and even wider beyond into the horizons that you could go into, they also don't appeal. I will emphasize it again. Today's questioner said, I feel like a boat in the middle of the sea, no feelings, no emotions, just wandering. I'm going to bring out a quote as well from the book that I held up earlier, Halfway Up the Mountain, and this is talking about the appetites and the hungers, which is something that comes up in a variety of mystical traditions, but just a little bit of a extract about, countering my point here. Your appetites do go with you to some degree. I'm going to weave it all together. Just hold the tension and the contradiction, and you'll see where I'm going with this. Quote from the book, from Halfway Up the Mountain. Whatever our hungers are, we transpose them onto the spiritual path. Those individuals who are lustful by tendency may, upon entering the spiritual path, attempt to acquire an array of bliss states and ecstasies, or use their spiritual glow to seduce potential sexual partners. Those who are vain and showy in ordinary life may work hard to acquire fancy robes, spiritual titles, and sophisticated spiritual language by which to show themselves off to their fellow spiritual aspirants. And finally, the sentence continues, the passive and lazy may find a spiritual school that tells them they are already enlightened and that they don't have to do anything. That final sentence here is a warning sign of not fully accepting that you're the captain on the fully repaired ship in the still waters and you should merely just let it be. I don't think that's a solution, but likewise we should be aware that unless you have truly dissolved all of your conditioning, developmental psychology, early ego complex and structure material, which is impossible, you're just not going to do it, you will still have appetites, but you don't yet know, crescendo moment for the video, you don't yet know what the highest version of your appetite might be. You know the low version, and the low version no longer works for you. The bottle of rum on deck, the hand of cards with your mateys, the man or the woman that you bring back into the captain's quarters. They're obvious, low-level appetites. You're beyond those. They don't work. But you've yet to complete the spiral all the way up from appetite to aversion, to appetite to aversion. Level 1, level 1, level 2, level 2, level 3, level 3. Feels like we're dancing the Macarena almost, as we're doing the spiritual dance here. Don't need to bring in the Macarena. Maybe we do. Maybe we all should dance the Macarena. Maybe the questioner should do a bit of Macarena to figure out, the appetite on the one hand, the aversion on the other hand. They're going to bring it back in. Who knows? Who knows where it might go? Bit of fun to loosen up a very symbolically, technically complex video for me to make. The point I want to make, my friend, is that you don't yet know what your true appetite is, and you also don't yet know what the true aversion is. You have yet to have enough of a reference experience to understand that there's always motion, there's always energy, and there's always an influence of appetite and aversion, even if everything seems completely still and like there's no particular direction going on. I cannot give you the personal solution for your personal life situation, but I guarantee that if you really, truly listen, on that day when you wake up on the salty summer's morning and you go above deck, you go up the stairs, you go up the next stairs, It's all empty and it's all calm. Doesn't look like there's any landmarks on the horizon. Feels almost as if you're lost, but you're not scared about it. You're not scared that you're lost in the ocean. You're just there. Then you go about your business and you go and check below deck, make sure there's no holes, make sure the crew are all in order, blah, 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 blah. That's what you're used to. What if you just waited? You waited right there at the very front of the ship looking out. Or maybe you go all the way up to the crow's nest and you look out over the horizon. Is it true that there's no landmark that takes your appetite? Is it really true? Is it really true that there's no aversion that's pulling you away from something or pushing you away from something? That could be a wind. Even the subtlest, most gentle wind. Isn't it fascinating? A wind could be working in your favor or against your favor, depending upon where you've decided to sail. And it's really just the human's personal appetite which makes a wind good or bad. Of course, the storm is bad for any sailor, but a good, strong gust that takes someone towards a destination, that's seen as a benefit and a grace. A strong gust going this way when you actually want to go the other way, that's seen as a curse. Try and feel the subtle winds that are guiding your course. You are far enough on your spiritual journey to know that things aren't just happening without a reason. You're a skilled enough sailor, and you've had enough difficult experiences to know that the environment around you does exert an influence upon you. You might be a little bit detached, or maybe, in a more extreme sense, you may be a little bit numb because of the battles that you fought over the last few years, just trying to keep the ship afloat, just trying to get from A to B, and to C, and to D, and to E, and to F. But now you have this moment. If you're standing at the front of the ship, or you're high up at the higher level perspective, it looks like it's a flat horizon, but I guarantee there is something worth sailing towards. And that's your purpose. That's the next stage of the journey. It is not good enough to simply wait on the ship forever and let the wind take you wherever it might. It's a combination of the two. If you're really, really genuinely calm and genuinely safe, you have the ability to feel the softest tickle of the breeze on your cheek and know that you're being guided this way. You don't need to have a forceful blow that forces you to pay attention over here. You're smacked with salt and spray and all kinds of bam, here comes the energy. Okay, I need to look over here. And then, oh, this way. Like this constant hitting and battling energy. I'm being dramatic. That's what it feels like when you're yet to heal the old wounds. It's happening not on the outside only, but also on the inside. You feel these constant pushings and pullings, and it feels like you're really, really just trying to hold it together. That's not the case anymore. You have the sensitivity. You have the serenity to feel the gentlest and let it go to completion. What should I look at? And you might spot something over there, or maybe the opposite way. You might spot something over there. But even if you don't, even being present with the fact that you're gently moved, you'll naturally feel the inner winds. You'll feel the gust, the passion. With time, it might take a few weeks or a few months. Maybe for the next stage of life, for this current stage of life to be more accurate, it is good enough to just go and do your morning rounds and make sure that everything is shipshape. And maybe it's enough to just look over the horizon and go, well, looks like there's nothing to see today. I don't know where I left my compass. I don't know where I left my map. Those old things weren't any good for me anyway. I think something new is going to arise intuitively. I'll know the new direction. Give that a few weeks or a few months. It won't be your permanent destiny. You won't be without purpose forever, but the inner peace that you feel and that you have worked hard and that you have fought hard to achieve will eventually be the strongest compass of all. You'll have the sensitivity on the outside and the sensitivity on the inside for that inner wind, that feeling of the heart flowing upwards, gushing upwards, surging upwards. I'd like to go here. I'd like to love in this way. I'd like to love this person a little bit deeper. I'd like to love through my work in a whole new expression. That will come through, but that might take a few more hours of sitting alone and surveying what seems to be a very barren, very still, almost eerily uncomfortable landscape. Just be patient, but also don't be passive. This is a really key distinction to wrap up the video. If you find yourself halfway up the mountain and you're at the point where there's no clear landmark, there's no clear appetite, you can be reminded that your appetites will come with you. If you're historically a lustful person, you may lust after something new in life, but the lust will have a much higher expression. If there's somebody who's particularly flashy or showy, again, a higher expression. The appetite and the aversion get layered and layered. And gradually, you sense the subtle shifts. But you also don't want to be passive about that process. There's an active mind feeling. If you're someone who's meditated for multiple years in a row, you know that meditating isn't just sitting down and tuning off. It's a very focused experience. For many forms of meditation, even if it's just a breath meditation, basic nostril in, nostril out, or some kind of basic visualization, it requires a focus, it requires a level of activity. Don't fall into the apathetic state. Just a warning sign. Perhaps for this questioner in particular, there's no emotions, there's no feelings, I'm just wondering. Don't let the wanderings undo the work that you've fought very hard to achieve. Do your morning rounds. Make sure everything in your day-to-day life is ticking over in a way that's sustainable. Go into maintenance mode. Show up to your work. Meet your expectations. Don't overburden. Don't rush into the next thing. Just let it be a few weeks or a few months at this stage. But please, don't get too passive. Passivity will be a mistaken spiritual identity in itself. It will be this mistaken assumption that now I've reached a certain level of enlightenment where I'm truly free of form. I'm truly detached and I have no appetites and no aversions. I'm merely one with all that is. You might be, but it's unlikely if you're in your 30s or 40s at this stage in life, based on the life circumstance that you have achieved that at this stage in your life. Just a temporary season of stillness, but the stillness is fertile with possibility. If you merely pause to pay attention. Practical invitation. You've reached the end of this video. You're kind of in the consciousness just now. Before clicking on to the next thing, before opening up your phone and going to see who's messaged with you, find a place, even if it's still in the room that you're in, ideally outside, where you can look into the distance. I like going up to the hill near my home. I like looking out on big vision perspectives and just seeing what arises. It might be something in the outer landscape, but usually for me, in a literal sense, when I go up to the overlook on the top of the hill, I'll see an image on the inside, and that's a daydream. That's an active imagination. That's something that's often, trivial, frivolous, might not seem so important. But if you keep noticing certain daydreams or certain impressions come up, guess what? That's an appetite. You have an appetite to pay attention towards a certain vision, towards a certain quality of consciousness. It might be a certain person. It might be a location on the earth. That could be the very faint impression, the faintest whisper of wind from the inside, the soul's storm starting to brew inside of you. And you need not be thrown into chaos and turbulence and be threatened by the waves that you used to in the past few years. You're safe. And in that safety, you can guide yourself from within. That's all for now. There's the next video. I'll be doing another question, just like this one. We're back.